other or Margaret, you know? So it's crazy.
Do you think there's any world
Crazy.
in which Louis is like not a bad guy? Like you look at all these, I mean, like everyone can't be wrong, right? You look at all these lawsuits with Benevilla, and I can't
No,
even follow them all.
I I will bet my bottom dollar that absolutely everybody out there, no matter how diehard you are for Teresa or Jen Aydin, if you saw every piece of evidence, every piece against this man, you would know he is literally the walking red flag.
That's what he seems like.
You would be afraid for her. You would be afraid for her. And then realizing the house is not in her name. Nothing
Right.
she owns is in her name. It's all in his name. There is no prenup. Like, ugh, she's in a bad situation. And you know what's
She,
even crazier, guys?
yeah.
You know what's even crazier? She's out here giving articles, which at this point, I don't even think it's her. I think it's him. And the people that are putting it out are people that work with their camp, like Diana Cooper from The Sun. She just put out an article the other day, you guys. And supposedly Teresa is quoted as saying, she's so lucky to have Louis in her life, that he's still sticking around after everything she has subjected him because of her platform. Like she's literally blaming herself for him getting like his own past thrown against him. That is all Louis, you guys. It's crazy the situation she finds herself in. She'll say to like anyone who listens, that's her soulmate. But I think she's in trouble. I think she's in trouble. And I've been asked, do you think Bravo's gonna fire her after they've been made aware of her leaking screeners and her plotting against the cast and Louis trying to ruin a Walmart deal with Margaret and everything they did to Fuda? Do you think they're gonna fire her? I said if they don't, it will be because they want cameras there on the ready when that whole facade comes crashing down. Whether the feds are involved because of this man or whether this man himself just does something to her. Like I think Bravo, if they keep her, will only keep her because they want cameras on the ready to capture that moment. And you know what, you guys,
Yeah.
I just want to say this real quick too, David. I worked with Teresa for like so many years. I was her fan for a decade. I've exposed everything, some of it wasn't pretty. It didn't feel good at first until it fully hit me that I was just revealing their truth. So in this whole process of, my journey with Teresa, where I come out at the end is I wish she would just let the truth be free and like she would own it. I wish, nothing but the best for her, but I myself too am in that boat of those people who have been made aware of the truth and fear for her. And I know a lot of people close to her feel that way. They're just too scared to say it.
I mean, how, like, the house is not in your name, there's no prenup. Like, here we are again. Like, how could you get yourself in this situation? It shocks me. It does.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, don't you hate her? Look at everything she did to ruin John Fuda. I mean, this man's business is probably suffering because of her coming on national TV and calling him a drug dealer, taking someone who was in jails. Like, we literally took Brittany, his ex, who was in jail at the time, who has a fishy history herself. We literally took what she said and set it in stone, and then they pushed it on TV. They were like, "Don't you think that that could have ruined his rep?" I said, "No, of course." And I said, "And trust me, I hate that I was a part of that. I hate that we did that. Trust me, there is a lot of things that I dislike about Teresa that I outright hate because at the end of the day, she knew, she was aware, she was plotting, she was very much involved in ruining people's lives for a show. So yes, I dislike a lot about her, guys, but I'm also not a cold-hearted bitch where I wish her the worst. I am concerned because I know what I know about Louis is true.
Yes. What about all? Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. There's a million lawsuits with Benevilla. I mean, they can't all just be out of nowhere, like not paying things and like this strange thing with a mortgage. It is all strange. I would agree that this isn't going to end well, whether you like her or not. I agree. I mean, what a sad story if you end up exactly where you ended up with like Joe Giudice and it's like history repeating itself. because this is your soulmate. It's so shocking to me,
Wow.
honestly.
If we witness that story go down, whew, crazy, right? That replayed itself. But Louis is no Joe Giudice.
No.
This is on a
What
whole nother level.
I would agree it's at a whole other level. What about this whole thing? Like she was on watch. First of all, I mean, are you shocked that, because I told you this before we spoke. I would say all the time, nobody cares about anything unless it's on the show. Andy doesn't care, Bravo doesn't care. It's like small. If it's not on the show, most people don't know. But here we are, the bloggers are being mentioned. They mentioned it to Jennifer Aydin when Teresa was on Watch What Happens. Andy just talked at his radio show about the future and I mean, like, people could love you or hate you, but you have affected this season of RHONJ. Now, I think people that are blaming you personally for the end of RHONJ, that's like putting the cart before the horse. It's like if Teresa wasn't doing all this, we wouldn't be here. So I think that personally is a false blame. But like, what do you think about the fact that like you have affected this season of RHONJ and the future of the show?
Well, I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all because if anything, when I came out and decided to tell my story, and it was my story to tell because I was a part of it, you
Yeah.
know, I was the one in those DMs. I was the one investigating. And this was all per them, but I was the one doing the footwork. I was the one going through the trenches for them. So I had a story there. Just like a lot of people were like, some of those Melissa Feaster texts didn't really paint Melissa Feaster in a good light. It did confirm BravoCon happened and that Jim Leonard was harassing her. But Melissa Feaster also insults Teresa in those texts. Why would you put that out there? I said, you know why, guys? Because that was also part of my story. Just like I put Teresa's texts out there, it was important to put Melissa's because it tells the whole story. And sometimes the story's not pretty, but it has to be told. And I'm part of that story. So why would I not? But I think it's important to have told this story. I sometimes think if I would have stayed silent, David, imagine how this whole season would have played out. We would have had a finale. I mean, we would have had a reunion. They would have all went to reunion. Teresa would have pulled out that John Fuda article that her camp is now pushing. She would have pulled that so-called evidence out of the envelope, and she would have played that against John Fuda. No one would have ever known that we found Brittany on purpose to bring her out, to do this to him. When she called him a drug dealer and that he loves the dildos, people would have thought that that was just something that came to be on Instagram or on Twitter, and Teresa's just talking about. No one would have ever known the truth behind the scenes. Nobody would have ever known that they weaponized screeners to plant narratives on social media to hurt the cast further. So sometimes I wonder if I would have taken that out of the grave, if I would have never come forward and told the truth, we would be witnessing an entirely different story. So when people say, do you realize what you have revealed changed everything? Oh, 1000%. How do I feel about it? Good. You know why? I mean, I'm sorry that the network is losing out on all that money for the reunion. And I really don't know why they canceled the reunion, but I am hearing that it was because everybody would have came with those envelopes. Everybody would have came with their receipts, with the voicemails, with the emails. Teresa would have been annihilated. She would have been ended, and legalities were going to be taking place left and right. And that's the main reason why they wanted to avoid this. But anyhow, I'm not, I don't have regret. I don't have regrets in coming forward and telling the truth and showing what happened behind the scenes. I do regret being involved with them. Jennifer Aydin sat there on Watch What Happens Live and said, the lesson here, when Andy said, what's the lesson? She owned to talking to bloggers, but he said, what's the lesson? And she said, don't talk to people. Well, reality check, sweetheart. We were doing more than talking. I didn't give myself the screeners. Talking didn't give me the screeners via email. I wasn't investigating Danielle Cabral in regards to that charity money, like because we were talking. There was an operation that was taking place here. There were people's lives that were being ruined for a stupid show. Like there was a lot that we were doing. It involved more than talking, and they know this. So, at the end, I have no regrets other than doing the bad stuff that I helped, do to people. I regret that. I don't regret coming forward and telling the truth. I actually feel like I owe it to the cast to tell them the truth. And I owe it to the fans. You know why? Because there are people who blindly support Teresa. And you know how we talked about at the beginning of this, how some people, it doesn't matter what you show them. I can play voicemails of Teresa talking about her nephew or, anything like that. People still won't believe it. They'll still doubt it and call it fake or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
But there are that group of people who now see her for who she really is. And if we're watching so-called reality, well, guess what, babe? I just played for you the reality behind this reality show. And a lot of people no longer support. And I didn't do this to take away their fans. I didn't do this to get them fired. I did this to reveal the truth. But sometimes the truth will set you free. And I'm glad, in this process that I've been able to awaken a lot of people to the truth. So
Yes.
that's how I feel about that.
Well, I mean, that all makes sense. And Andy even said, like, on his radio show where he said, he like, I don't like this Michigas with like the bloggers and leak screeners and spoil. He's like, I don't like it. And he's like, we are going to take our time and we're going to figure this out. And basically, I've never heard him so convicted before a finale, but we're not having a reunion. So he basically said, like, it's over. Like, whoever, he said he could see 4 scenarios of how RHONJ